very lengthy question from the beginning.
Jackie, you mentioned that you had a wobble over the weekend, and I was kind of wanting to understand how you dealt with that. My personal wobble is around communication. So, whereas we're used to being sat in a room, we can lip read, we can pick up tones. Um, the communication channel with humans seem to have disappeared and added a lot of pressure. So I'm seeing a lot of people blaming or being aggressive, and I want to understand how it is for you, because things like the news, how it's delivered, is very uncertain. And I guess with you having hearing difficulties, that must be quite hard as well. I mean, we don't have signers on the news. Do you pick everything up okay?
Well, it's funny actually because the Scottish and Welsh news do have a signer, so I'm not quite
Mhm.
sure why they don't on the English or England one, if you like. But that's perhaps for another day. I and normally I follow very well using subtitles, but the news is very difficult because the trouble with anything live like the news is the subtitles are sort of half a word or more behind, and because I can pick up a little bit of the words and I'm half looking at the subtitles, it's just too many senses going on. It's a bit kind of like tapping your head and rubbing your stomach, and it's just really difficult. So the news is always a bit of a struggle, but I can listen to that on the radio because it goes straight into my ears. So I think that I'm quite used to picking up every clue that I can possibly get, between my sight, my hearing, reading the music and the dance of people's expressions, and what they do with their hands and all that kind of thing. So whereas the news probably isn't particularly different for me at the moment because I'm kind of used to only being able to get 70% of what's going on, I guess. But absolutely, this communication via Zoom and all these tools, they are fantastic. In that they're so much better than us not being able to speak to each other at all, aren't they? But I agree. There's something about sitting looking at your computer or whatever and not being in the same room as someone. You just don't get the music and the dance. You just don't get all that little hidden stuff that we humans pick up on and don't even know that we're doing it, which really conveys what somebody actually means. And I read an article about why everyone's kind of going off on Zoom, and it was sort of saying that it was so exciting at the beginning, and everybody's kind of found themselves actually getting a little. People have found themselves getting a little bit bored about by it. And the article was saying, I think it's because you think you're getting human contact, but actually you're not. That
Mhm.
there is no substitute for seeing people in person. And I
Mhm.
really, the more this goes on, the more I'm starting to think this is true. And just
Mhm.
the last thing I have to say, don't you just want to have a hug? I,
Yeah.
I just
Yes.
want to, see. I mean, we had this wonderful 2 meter distancing with my fabulous 88-year-old neighbour the other day for VE Day, and it was really great. I'm really glad we did it. She told us some fabulous stories, but I was just kind of like this. I just wanted to break the 2 meters and give her a hug. It just
Mhm.
seemed the most natural thing to do, and to not do it just kind of came a bit all consuming. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so
I,
I'm with you. I miss that. Definitely miss the human contact. I understand where you're coming from totally.
I find it difficult because for so much of the time my internet isn't working. Um, Sometimes the phone's not working. Emma tried ringing me last night. The phone didn't ring and she thought I was asleep. I was expecting a call. And
Mm,
rather than assume or look into it as a problem, I'm finding that's happening a lot with things like committee meetings or team workshops. Some of us can get into them, and some
Yep.
people then think, oh, you're not interested because you can't communicate. And there's so many assumptions
Mm.
that I really struggle with that communication and not being able to speak to someone.
mm.
Um, Sense of isolation is just so loud. Um, I just think, in some ways, when going back to my cancer diagnosis, there was isolation that kind of stood me in good stead for now.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that you're on the same page?
Yes, and I've heard that from other people as well. That I don't know if this is the same for you. Probably is. I think you naturally can be a bit protective of the contact you have with people. You kind of subconsciously know who's good for you and who's not quite doing or saying the right thing when you've just had a cancer diagnosis or you're going through treatment. And I think you're so sensitive is probably maybe sounds too negative, but maybe a little bit vulnerable. And I was very aware that one little thing that somebody could said, which was always well-meaning. I mean, no one says something to you when you've got cancer deliberately wants to hurt you or upset you, do they? But sometimes they can just make the wrong comparison, or just kind of say, "Oh, you'll be fine," or and in that moment it feels a bit dismissive or that kind of thing. And I think I definitely built up a kind of a wall around me, but in a positive way that kind of worked and let in the people that I knew it would work with. And so I think, yes, you get used to analysing your thoughts yourself, sort of sorting your own head
Yeah.
out. Not particularly relying, well, me anyway, not particularly relying on other people to do that. And I think that probably is quite useful in this situation, because of all the things that you were just saying. That, I mean, I feel for you if your phone's not working either. I mean, that was just so difficult. I can't believe the issues you're having with. I mean, at least my Wi-Fi works. But is
Don't
that
worry,
normal?
Jackie. Don't worry, Jackie. I still manage to annoy you plenty.
That's good. That's yeah. I'm relieved to hear that, Emma. That's great. And I have to say, you have also sorted out her broadband before. I know. I happen to know this from our last aborted attempt to try and speak on this podcast.
I think Emma spent eight hours or so trying to fix
Oh,
it, and we've
bless
come to
you.
the assumption that some things can't be fixed.
Oh, why is it so bad where you live?
Mm.
I
Now, I don't
think
think it's
part of it.
I think it's
Oh, on your
the feed, isn't it? The internet provider, I think, has been
Right.
overwhelmed by. It's not particularly fast connection anyway, and there's so many in the area. I think that's part of the problem. But
Right.
I think the other thing is, I think Sara lives in the Bermuda Triangle of Horbury.
Oh gosh, look at you. Sounds
But
great.
even you have missed some emails, haven't you, Emma? Even you have
I
had where you've not got emails or.
Yeah, I have, yeah. But then I live in the Bermuda Triangle of Ossett, so that's.
Well, to be honest, I can't really complain. Well, I mean, it used to be absolutely rubbish here until about a year ago, and then we got fibre optics, and that just changed my working life hugely. But then, unfortunately, 3 other people have arrived, and they're all using broadband at the same time now. So I've got my student daughters back home, so they're needing to kind of do their online lectures and stuff, and my husband's working from home all day as well, and so it's a bit like, no, I'm having that gig of Wi-Fi or whatever it's measured in. No, I'm having it. No, I'm having it. So, I've sent my husband off
So
now.
what's your work life? What's your work life like now? I mean, are you having to timetable everything so that you can write at a certain time, give the kids space, give your husband space? I mean, how does that affect your writing?
I have to say I'm quite lucky, really. And when I say work, it's kind of loosely termed because I'm getting so much more time to actually write, which I probably should call work. Right, yeah, work, because I am meant to do it, and I'm not going to get paid for it, if you like, if I don't get a book out there. So it is work. But there's something about when you're not paid until way down the line, if you're lucky, that it's hard to kind of call it work. But the great thing about writing is I don't actually need much internet for that, if any. It's more for kind of searching stuff and that kind of thing. It's just more that if I have anything like this, I have to sort of kind of try and get into my husband's timetable and organise it around his Zoom meetings and MS Teams and all the rest of it. And where in the past he's worked from home for quite a while, actually, a few years, but he would be off down to London for a meeting or into Leeds or whatever. I mean, he was very, very rarely here all day. And now absolutely everything is from home. So trying to get a little slot when I could just kind of get in and do my Zoom is quite tricky. And then the girls have got these online lectures, which is great, and online seminars. I mean, it's fabulous that they're getting it, but they seem to be really sort of broadband hungry. So if both of those are on at the same time, it's quite good, really, because it's like, well, I may as well write, because I definitely can't even do an email. So I guess in a way, it's quite good, because gives me slots that I perhaps wouldn't allow myself to have otherwise.
We have to have a timetable in our house, Jackie, as well, because Tony's in there in the office doing his photo editing, or he might be doing some kind of like, filming or something. And of course I have to, that's my preferable area to work. I don't want to feel like the rest of my house is my office as well.
Yeah.
So there is a kind of, I'm not going to say battle of wills, because clearly I would win. But it is, there is that element to it. And of course, from Monday he starts a new job, which is 7 till 3, 7 days a week. So I know that time is completely out of the question for me, unless I go somewhere else. So there is definitely a juggling element to it all as well, isn't there? And I think, if you're working in a harmonious relationship, that's fine. I joke about me and Tony quite a lot, but I think there are other scenarios where perhaps it's not quite so politically well done, and I think there's fractious kind of arguments that can ensue from that. So you've obviously got quite a good setup where you are in your home, which not necessarily is every replicated in every house, I think.
I think it must be a very common problem at the moment, and I'm sure there would have been a bit of like, oh, what you mean? I don't actually have to get in my car and drive into work, so I can have another half hour in bed and I can sit in my pajamas and do my work at the desk. This sounds great, and I'm sure there was a bit of that going on, which is probably pretty much universally dropped off now as the reality of having to work from home. Whether you manage to handle it harmoniously or not, it's actually not that easy, and it's not actually that normal. It's our normality now. But I think that as life inevitably takes on sort of a different form as we go through this, and hopefully much easier as life goes on, and the COVID has gone sort of more into the background, I do think more people will be working from home, but you won't have somebody in the bedroom on one computer and a student upstairs, and both battling for the same space, because one of you is much more likely to be out in a meeting or doing something else. So I just think at the moment it's probably really exaggerated, and I guess if people are finding it a bit fraught, just got to kind of like hang on in there, because I just don't think here's hoping it's not going to be like this forever.
So Jackie, obviously you wrote Tea and Chemo and Glass Houses, so you've got real life experience as a cancer patient, and then you've got fiction. Do you have to be in a specific place to be able to write fact versus fiction?
That's a good question. Do you have to be in a specific place? I think not massively for me. I think that might be different if you're writing some very technical non-fiction, whereas my non-fiction in Tea and Chemo was very much still sort of kind of from my core, if you like. It was still where my head was going, pictures very much sort of formed in my own head, and fiction is sort of the same. It's just that I have these characters in there who seem completely real to me. But when I'm doing research for my fiction or non-fiction. I think that's a different part of my brain altogether. And I say that because I actually love what happens when you do research, in that I'll start reading about something and then kind of wander a bit deeper into there, and all of a sudden, if it's fiction, I'll have an idea for a character, and I'll think, oh my word, that fact I've just found out, it's absolutely perfect, it's going to really, really fit that character. But before I go into doing any research, I have to remind myself of this, because my head always just wants to write. I want my creative juices flowing. I want the story kind of flying onto the page and all that kind of thing. And it's definitely a different part of my head that goes, right, I need to find this out today. And I can't write any more until I've understood this subject or topic that my character happens to be interested in much better before I can write any more. So yeah, I think for Tea and Chemo and Glass Houses, not as much as if it was really technical, but there were definitely times where I was trying to write Glass Houses and thought, my head's just not in the game, I'm going to write a blog post, or vice versa. And Tea and Chemo came from the blog post, so it was different.
So that's almost like you were pacing yourself by setting yourself targets of what you wanted to achieve in the day, rather than overwhelming yourself by trying to do everything and learn everything all at once, which is what you would use hopefully as a strategy throughout sort of cancer fatigue, that kind of thing.
Emma, I wish you were talking about me. What you were describing is what I strive to do every day and abysmally fail. In fact, ask John, my husband, about these, particularly when I go on holiday and I'm like, right, when I come back and I know I'm not alone here, I'm going to do this in my day, and I'm going to stop trying to get my emails done before I actually write a word of fiction. I'm going to write for an hour of fiction, and then I'll have that done and I'll feel great, and then I'll still get my emails done. And it does work for about a week. But then I kind of sit at my desk and I kind of think, oh, I can't really start my fiction because I know that person's waiting for this email on, and I know that it's really time sensitive, so I need to kind of send it, and everything kind of sort of slips. I definitely feel that I did not get enough sleep before I had cancer, and I'll never know. But I suspect that, I don't think lack of sleep gives you cancer, if you like, but I think that when cancer came calling, I don't think my body was in its best position to fend it off, because I was definitely sleep deprived. And since then, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, did you say in your book it was about 5 hours a night you were getting?
That was on a good night, I would say. I think sometimes 5. I think the average was probably 4. And then maybe once a week I might have a bit of a catch up. But I've since kind of read about it, and it said you can't actually catch up. It's all about trying to get the right amount of sleep most nights. Mm-hmm. Not the end of the world if there's the odd night, but it needs to be more the exception rather than rule, which was in my case. So since then, I have had to really change my life, and this is why I'm always trying to do it, and just I don't succeed. I do end up working at night. I do end it slips into the weekend and all the rest of it, and I know I'm not alone there at all. But at least now I'm trying.
What's your sleep pattern like now, Jackie? What with COVID?
I did that thing that a lot of people were doing, where I had big nightmares at the beginning. Did you have that?
Yeah, I had a few really bizarre ones. Black and weird, like, am I really living this? Is this really happening?
Yeah.
Parallel universe. Did I hear right? Am I really listening and seeing what's on the news? So I had to limit all the social media.
Mm-hmm.
I can't be a slave to these emails that are just teeming in, and I can't let them be a noose around my neck anymore. And I struggle with knowing that not all the emails are coming through. and what message to give to people as if I'm not interested. So I'm really trying to practice self-care, taking time out and using the 3 Ps, which is planning, prioritizing, and pacing. But I keep falling off the wagon. In terms of that was the intention, and now I just want, I need to catch up and sleep. I need to go to bed for a couple of hours. I mean, I look at you and think, wow, how did you sit and write that book? How long does it take you to write a book?
Oh, don't ask me. I'm terrible. Yeah, I'm not a good example. It takes me ages. Other people are much quicker. I'm not too bad at writing the first draft. Tends to take me about a year, and that's not spending that many hours on it because I just can't. I mean, this is the other thing. However much I write, however many hours I spend on it, I always beat myself up that I'm not spending enough time on it. And sometimes I manage to just say, you're not sitting watching telly, you're not in the like busy Olympics. If that's all you can get done, that's all you can get done. And sometimes I say that to myself, and other times I need to remind myself, and I don't. And again, this is people everywhere, and I'm not on my own, am I? But yeah, so it seems to take me about a year to write the first draft, which is not bad. That's okay. But then it takes me 3-4 years to edit it. I'm terrible. I do plan my writing. But then as I continue forward with my plan, I start thinking, nah, totally wrong. That character's not going to do that at all. I'm going to give them a whole different story, and then I may as well be back to the beginning again. So I'm fully aware of why it takes me so long, but that's just the way I write. I can't really do much about that. So yeah, other people, how they do it, I see it happen. They turn a book round from first idea to first draft, edit with a publisher, out within a year, and that just blows my mind. That is never going to be me, so I'm not even going to try.
It's funny, sometimes it's hard to get words on paper, and I think about our shared cancer experiences, and Emma and I have had a high influx of recently diagnosed patients or people with new ailments because of how they're sat at the desk, which is homemade. It's not like in the office. And we've lost friends to COVID recently, or friends to cancer, and we've both commented on how hard it is not being able to say goodbye or go to funerals. And we both said maybe writing could be the answer. Writing words on paper, getting those feelings and emotions out. Both of us struggle with the fact that we don't find it easy to talk about positive things in poetry, or it has to be a negative to really feel the pain to get the words out. How do we
I knew you were
harness?
dropping me in it. You're trying to drop me in it now, aren't you? I know exactly where this is going. I did my
Well, you do
homework.
homework.
I have to say, Emma, I did read one of your poems, and it was beautiful, but it was very raw, I would say. It was deep, and it was quite raw. So I was only one poem, but it definitely wasn't a light and fluffy read.
No,
Yeah.
truthful to Sara, though, she's right. It is I find it difficult, and I know Sara finds it difficult to write that happiness. And I think actually it would be quite useful to be able to do that, especially at times like this. So some tips maybe would be quite good.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that I would say before I try and think of some tips, and I have got some tips, but is the trouble. I think a lot of fiction. People say, "Oh God, I just want to read something a bit upbeat," and it's all just so morbid and dark and deep and all the rest of it. I'm afraid it's a truth of story writing that often the better stories are of kind of human endeavor and overcoming great obstacles and challenges in life, and generally, if it's a huge obstacle or a challenge, generally it's something that has been difficult, and that might have caused big emotions of grief and failure, and illness, etc. Unfortunately, these themes, they do make good a good basis for fiction writing. Um, so even just kind of on a practical level, it probably kind of does help you, actually, if you're kind of feeling that, I don't know, anything from a lack of self-confidence that day to feeling absolutely dreadful about the world, on a much bigger level. They probably do help you tap into that area, which is going to get you into the frame of mind to write about these huge human difficulties that we have. But that isn't to say it always has to be like that, or that you have to get yourself. You don't have to kind of punch yourself in the face to be able to sit down and write. You can sit down and write without having felt real pain. I think that it's a bit like anything, really, that writing is a very natural thing to do. Like running, if you like running, or walking is a very natural thing to do. But it doesn't mean that you can't train. So most children could go out and they could run down the road. No one'd have to say, right. Well, I guess they do learn it as a toddler, don't they? But anyway, no, you don't have to say to a 6-year-old, right, I'd like to run down there. What you need to do is put your right foot toes down first, and then they can just kind of do it. But then you could go and train to be able to do it better. And writing is just the same, really. I think we can all naturally, if we want to do it, we can express ourselves. But what training and practice does is it kind of gives you a set of rules, so that when you can't get going, or when it's not going very well, you can actually look at your piece of writing objectively, or extract your idea objectively, and apply XYZ to at least get going with it, or to know how to edit it and see what's not working in it.
That's really interesting, actually, Jackie, because that reminds me of the parallels of when I had really bad side effects to chemo. I couldn't walk, I couldn't use my arms, and I was reliant on my mum to feed me, dress me, bathe me. And it took a long time with rehab and physio to relearn those skills that were natural. So I get what you're saying, that you have to do training to progress. That's really powerful, actually.
Good. I'm sort of reeling a bit from your story from chemo. That's awful
It's
that it
not
hit you so
everyone's
badly.
experience.
No.
I mean, most people don't have that story, but it was a tough time, and I try and use that to make the best of every day.
Mhm.
And I think looking at the uncertainty of cancer and the possibility of recurrences kind of has parallels to our experience now with COVID and shielding. So maybe that's something that I would channel in a positive way into getting words on a page.
I'm sure. I'm sure. I I think maybe one of the tips I would say is just take a bit of pressure off yourself. Just don't sit down and think, right, I really need to write a story. Am I in the right frame of mind? Um, I must do this, that kind of thing. But again, this is a little bit like running as well. I'm a bit into running. I think you are as well, aren't you, Emma? Um, that it's the man. I actually love running. It's like it's the thing in my life. Personally, for me, it just sorts me out. But the bizarre thing is, and this is the same with writing for me, is that I'll sit at my desk and I'm going, right, I'm going out running at 2 o'clock. I'll have a bit of a lower moment of kind of productivity, like people have middle afternoon, I'm going out, I sit at my desk, and it becomes monumentally difficult to get out the door, even though I love it. It's ridiculous. And I swear it's my brain is going, it's just too much like hard work, and sending me these messages, and I'm like, no, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. And then I get out there, and the amount of times I kind of just start running, and I think, oh, I'll just make it a really short one today. I'll just run around the block. But I never do. Once I'm out, I always run for however long I would had time to do. And it's the same with writing, that if you say to yourself, oh, I've got to be in this frame of mind, I'm going to write a short story, it's going to be about this, your brain often kicks in and you don't realize it's saying this to you. You'll think you're just procrastinating, and you'll annoy yourself because why can't you do it? Why can't you sit down and write this story? But I swear it's your brain going, that is such a big, massive thing you're asking yourself to do. Actually, go and put the washing on instead. Because you don't have to think about that. And I really think that's a massive thing in why people universally, I've found it with myself, I've found it with my students, find it difficult to sit down and write. So, long-winded way of getting around to saying, one of my tips would be, don't say to yourself, am I in the right frame of mind to write this story? I'm going to write this story, which is going to be X, Y, Z. Say to yourself, I'm going to spend just 10 minutes, because that 10 minutes is going to, even if I'm so ridiculously busy today, 10 minutes is not going to make the difference between me achieving, ticking everything off on my to-do list and not. 10 minutes is nothing. I mean, you could stare into space for 10 minutes. It's nothing, but you can actually write loads in 10 minutes. I've seen it in my classes 1,000 times over. And say, right, I'm just going to open my book. I'm going to have a plain piece of paper, and I'm just going to write for 10 minutes. And then you think, okay, I'm sitting there and I've got my plain page in front of me, which is always the hard thing. First word's always the hardest. And then think, okay, right, I don't know where to start. Look around my room. Oh, I've seen a mug with pens out, they're sticking out the top. So if you've got that arty kind of mind, you could draw a little picture of a mug, or you could write mug and then do those diagrams. The name's gone on my head now, but the diagram where you write a word in the middle. Yes, and then you kind of it keeps going off and off and off. So you're not sitting down to write a short story, but I bet you as soon as you start increasing that spider, you might be not interested in the mug, you're not interested in a cup of tea, you're not interested in the milk, which leads you on to the milkman delivered the milk. Why do milkmen deliver milk anymore? And you go, oh, and then you suddenly think of a person who might be a milkman, and all of a sudden that little creative bit of your brain has started to go, and I bet you then you'll kind of move into a story, and then you might find that it is a happy story because you didn't put yourself under any pressure either way of what you were going to write. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm now writing a story about a spider and a milkman.
Yeah, I love it. Brilliant. Brilliant. The trouble is we're all going to write that now. But you know, that's the other thing. You can give the same topic or word to 10 people in a room and you'll get 10 different stories. That's another thing that I love about writing. Never the same. And people always, I always get people in my classes and I get it. They'll say, oh, I don't really want to talk about this story because I'm secretly worried that someone else will steal the idea. And I'm kind of like, they won't, because your idea won't suit them, because it's such an individual thing. And yes, you might think there are only a finite number of stories you could write given the title of the mug, but you'd be amazed. There aren't. As soon as you change the characters or the time frame, the situation, the geography, on and on and on it goes. And then you add in your own personality and your own experiences, and you'll always get a different story.
So is that where the teacup in Tea and Chemo came from? On the front cover?
Do you know, I have to say,
I'm
like
just
I said,
looking
it's
at it
nothing
now
to
and
do
thinking,
with me.
what?
I actually love that cover because I wanted
great.
it to not be dead serious.
Yeah.
But the Tea and Chemo, that was the publisher I thought was brilliant on this, because when I went with my idea, I had kind of a working title which was called it isn't all bad, or it wasn't all bad. And that's because I kept saying to people when they were going to say, "Oh, I can't believe you've been through this," after I'd been through my year of treatments, if you like. And I realised I kept saying to them, it wasn't all bad. And so I gave this title to the publisher, and he just kind of smiled to himself and went, "Do you know that it's very, very unusual that the publisher actually goes with the title that the writer's given?" I was like, okay. And he said, "Because you know too much, and that title is very clever to you, but on the front of a book it doesn't mean anything." And also he said, "You try and Google 'It wasn't all bad,' something that I never would have thought about." So then he said, "Right, come on," and he had me brainstorming, and he's going, "What's in there?" And he said, I have to say, on my reading of it, he said, "You drink a lot of tea." And that's kind of that started us thinking about the tea and chemo. But I thought, yes, I do have very fond memories of tea and chemo, and that tea or just going to hospital, or in a all situations when you go and see someone, they offer you a cup of tea, don't they? But particularly when something's going on, it kind of seems to be our go-to. Is like, "Oh, give them a cup of tea, they'll be all right," sort of thing. And I did sort of associate. I would go in for chemo. The nurses would all be so fabulous at looking after you, and everyone from the volunteers, right up through the hierarchy of staff, everyone would just be so kind to you, and all this would be going on, and they'd all be doing their jobs, and I would be drinking tea. And so,
And do you know what though? So on a serious note, Jackie, there is a very scientific reason for it to be tea, because tea does contain micronutrients that actually do help boost your mood.
That's funny. I didn't know that.
It's
I
true.
didn't know that. Gosh.
See,
The next
factual.
title,
Oh, what? Sorry.
the next title of Jackie's book is "Boost Your Mood."
Oh. Well, I think I must be a very happy person because I have about 20 cups of tea a day. Don't let me ever stop. I'll be absolutely miserable as sin.
At the current time, then, Jackie, are you self-isolating or are you in the shielding group?
Not at all. No. Do you know what happened to me after my secondary diagnosis?
No.
No. Is it right time to share? It's a very good story, very positive
Okay.
story.
I'm just writing it down.
Okay. I did actually write a blog post about it because I found it so I really, really wanted to explain this and tell this story because it's such a positive story. But it's it needs a lot of explaining. So I ended up writing a blog post about it. And tried to kind of send it out as a link to everybody I wanted to see it to everybody I wanted to see the blog post, because I really, really wanted to tell them. But it's a bit like kind of primary diagnosis. It almost becomes quite stressful. Making sure you kind of told the people who really should know. You don't want people who, you're quite close to. You don't want them to find out before somebody who's just kind of happened to find out, because I've got the milkman in my head now. The milkman's told them. And it was kind of the same with this blog post. So I'm really sorry you haven't seen it, because I hadn't realised that you hadn't. My fault, probably. Anyway, I'm going to try and cut a very long story short about sorry.
I'm just wondering, Jackie, if you're referring to the blog where you've gone through a secondary diagnosis and then you're told that you're okay, and
Yes.
it's how you believe that, how you trust it, when your body's let you down once and twice with cancer, and then
Yes.
so much uncertainty, and you want to give hope to people, but you struggle with that news. Do you worry about it?
That's exactly it. Okay, so it's very, very unusual. It isn't anybody made a mistake. It's just that my body kind of is weird. and it showed up weird things on scans, and everything about a sort of dead patch, if you like, or a high calcium patch would be in my spine, and various little spots were also found on scan. Everything about them pointed towards secondary cancer, including exactly the spot where the high calcium area was found on scan. That was exactly where my oncologist explained it to me, that it was almost like if you were going to bet on where my breast cancer would first metastasize and move into secondary cancer, and as so go elsewhere, would be where they found this big spot, this big patch of it. And then these are the kind of spots sort of corroborated that. So I had 3 years since the secondary diagnosis in 2017, and then just Christmas 2019, and they were scanning me. They were saying, this is fabulous, there's no new cancer, there's no active cancer, so the treatment you're on is working really well. And then after a while they were starting to say, which is actually really unusual, because normally you'd see that the cancer on this treatment would either be getting smaller or bigger, but it wouldn't not be doing anything. So me, having a bust a gut to even get my biology at O level, was a bit like, well, isn't it just sort of doing its job then? And they were saying no, because if it was doing its job, it definitely would be shrinking. So it's a bit weird. So I was saying in the beginning, so are you saying that it might not be secondary cancer? And everyone was like, no, well, we're not going there. We're really not going there, because everything else about it is saying that it is. But this is really good news. But the thing was, that was enough for me to think, well, I don't really understand the technicalities of what they're saying, but I don't see how I could be in a better position than no new cancer or no active cancer. So that allowed me to tell my brain that if I wasn't going to be one of the incredibly lucky ones that had this secondary diagnosis, of which there are a sizable minority, I have to say, but had this secondary diagnosis and actually managed to stay for years and years and years on the first treatment that they try. And then the longer you can stay on the first treatment that you try, then, you've got more years under your belt, if you like. It's the way I kind of see it, before you have to try the next treatment down the line, the next treatment down the line. And all the time that you're hanging on in there, you just don't know what's around the corner, do you? I mean, modern medicine at the moment is fantastic. So I have to say that I had, with this secondary cancer, which eventually, after the 3 years, was shown to be, we've checked it, we've monitored it, we've really kind of done a belt and braces job on it, because we've left it 3 years. In that time, we would have seen something to say it was definitely secondary cancer. On that basis, we're going to kind of revoke the diagnosis, if you like, and say that actually it's not secondary cancer and it never was. Now, that is really unusual. But what I have learned is that a diagnosis of secondary cancer is not the nail in the coffin, if you like, it's probably not a very tactful way to say it, but is, once you've had that diagnosis, when you've had primary cancer, that's probably everyone's biggest fear, isn't it? On top of your family or your other loved ones getting cancer. And so once I'd kind of got that diagnosis and started to get my head around that, I realised from my own experience, but more importantly other people's, that there is so much they can do for secondary cancer now. These maintenance treatments, these kind of holding treatments they do, if you're lucky, you can live with cancer for many, many years, secondary cancer. And as I say, that's all we want, really, because there's other stuff coming, and it is coming, and it will come. It's just when, isn't it? So I was really, really lucky. It has taken a bit of time, and I don't know if I'm even fully there yet, and it's 5 months on from having the decision reversed. It's a nice problem to have, I'm not complaining. But I think I did such a job on my head of I have got secondary cancer, but I am not going to let it get me. I'm not going to be the star. It's not going to be me. That it's quite hard to turn that thing that's gone on in my head. I almost did such a good job on my head. It's quite hard to undo it and not think I'm going to wake up in the morning and they're going to go, Jackie Buxton, ever so sorry about that. You know that time we called you in and said that it wasn't secondary cancer, actually it was Jackie Burton. It wasn't Jackie Buxton, the wrong person. You actually have got it after all. So I think I'm still not quite there. But like I say, it is a nice problem to have.
I think the power of the mind is quite an amazing thing when you're going through an illness or cancer. And for me, the biggest message that we need to encourage people at this time with COVID, with lockdown, is not to shut down if we've got a symptom.
Mm-hmm.
That sooner we act on reporting that to a GP and getting a referral, then the sooner we can deal with the diagnosis. There has been a serious drop in people attending appointments or going to the GPs or going to hospital, even with a heart attack or a stroke, because they fear COVID. I mean, would you fear going to your GP if you noticed something new, Jackie?
Yeah, it's a real problem, isn't it? I would definitely call the doctor. I would definitely call, and I'd like to think that I wouldn't put that off. If it was other things, I probably would put it off, to be honest. But if I had the remote glimmer of feeling that it might be serious, I would definitely call the doctor. And I've actually got a couple of friends with GPs, and they are saying that it's the opposite at the moment. They're so quiet, and they might be operating a different kind of surgery, so the surgery might actually be shut, but the doctors are still all on the other end of a line, the phone line. Yeah. So you'll probably speak to a doctor much quicker than you normally would have done, or a nurse, or whoever you need to speak to. And if you call your local doctors, you definitely will talk to whoever you need to speak to. They are there. It's not like the GP surgery is overrun with COVID cases, because it just isn't.
I think what I find quite interesting about what you said there, Jackie, is if you felt that it was serious, you would go.
Yeah.
And I think the difference for me is that we're talking here as three people who have experienced that.
Yeah.
If you're not sure what a symptom looks like, I think from my position, I would say to somebody, if something new has occurred, or if something has changed, if it's an unusual thing for you, if you don't recognize it, as something as normal within your body, that's a symptom enough for me to say, go and get it checked, because it could mean it's something different.
Joe, I'm so glad you said that, because as I said it, my brain's kind of saying, but that's not right. So don't follow my advice. No, I agree. It's. I mean, they normally say, don't they, if you have anything that's different for more than a couple of weeks or so, then you should call your doctor. But even, I have to say, when I felt the lump that turned out to be breast cancer, when I felt it, my heart went through my feet, because I knew it was different. I didn't know it was cancer, but because it was different, I had that and so I did ring the doctor straight away. But I've heard of so many people who didn't have that experience at all, and did put it off, and thought, oh, maybe it's hormonal or whatever. And also, in a way, a lump's slightly easier, because you can tell yourself, well, I do need to ring about a lump. And it can be other things, can't it? Like extreme fatigue. And you're telling yourself, no, I've just not had enough sleep. I've been burning the candle at both ends. I'm stressed or whatever. But I think if you really sit yourself down and say to yourself, is this normal tiredness, or could it be something else? And as soon as you start even asking yourself that question, why not pick up the phone? Nobody minds. GPs do not mind. They that's what they do. They want to make people better. And somebody once said to me, a GP friend, he said, you don't want to catch people down the line. You want to see people straight away. And part of your job is to say to people, I'm consoling you that this is not what you have. And because I'm a doctor, I can tell you A, B, C, this is why I'm not worried about you.
Yeah.
And that's as much their job as spotting the really scary stuff.
And it's funny because you picked a symptom there that actually is quite common in this pandemic lockdown, the increase in fatigue. Me and Sara were talking about this today. I'm feeling more tired than normal, but I'm not used to using this level of technology. So there may be a realistic reason for the symptom being there or for the change, but things like increased indigestion, again, if you're worried about it, if it's prolonged, get it checked. It could be symptom of something different, but it could also be the fact that you've changed your diet on this lockdown. You're maybe eating more than normal, so there could be a reasonable explanation, but unless you speak to somebody, you won't know.
Exactly. And things like, I mean, I have to be careful here because I am really no doctor, and like I said before, science is really not my thing, but just because say, thankfully, you might find out that yes, you've had extreme fatigue, and you'll be very, very happy it's not cancer. That's great, but it's good you went to your doctor because you might actually be low in iron, or you might, there might be something kind of wrong with your diet, and why shouldn't you be seen about that as well? And it kind of seems to me a little bit at the moment that in a way that putting it off until the COVID crisis is over is not a good strategy anyway, because when is the COVID crisis going to be over? If you kind of have that kind of feeling, which I have to say is very virtuous. I know people don't want to be a burden, do they? And that's what they're thinking. I can't really go around for that. It's tiny compared to what some people are suffering. But if everybody stays at home, then at some point they're going to have to go to the doctors. So if you're very kindly thinking, I don't want to burden the doctor, actually you're probably adding to a pile. There's going to be like a magnet, almost like they're going to open the doors and it'll be this like massive influx of people. So you're actually probably helping your doctor in a way to call now. And I mean, it might simply be that it's the surgery shot, you speak to somebody over the phone, they go through your symptoms, they experienced and all these kind of things, know what it is, tell you, that's the end of the conversation. Well, that's fine. You've not really wasted much time at all, have you, anyway?
We've had a couple of patients with scares. I've had calls at stupid o'clock, midnight, saying I found a lump, I don't know what to do about it. And it's firstly breaking it down into reducing the anxiety and let's be realistic about what you can do. And the GPs have been amazing, doing telephone calls as well as, whether it's FaceTime, Skype, whatever technology. And we've seen and spoken to patients just this week who, one was suspected with ovarian cancer. She had 2 appointments within 2 days, and within a week she'd had a scan and got a result that she was fine. And the feedback of other people that have had diagnostic testing is it's business as usual, and don't believe everything that you hear in the media nationally. Locally, we are doing a good job. So I guess for me, I'm trying to encourage people to come forward. The longer you sit on a problem, the more anxiety you've got. And cancer's going to be here after COVID. I think people just need a lot of reassurance.
Yeah.
I did an exercise the other day where I kind of wrote down all the words that I associated with COVID, and it was kind of the makings of a very dark poem where none of the words joined up because the world stopped and everyone didn't know how to react. And I look at it and I still can't piece the bits together. And I think part of that is a reflection on what the media are telling us and what is a genuine message. So I think I'm going to be encouraged to be getting more words on paper, to express how I feel and to
Fabulous.
maybe explain to other people's anxieties. I think that might be a bit of therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that idea. And don't you think as well that confusion, there's a lot of confusion, which is you can kind of put blame on people if you like. I'm kind of thinking that Boris is coming for a lot of criticism this week after his Sunday message was kind of quite difficult to kind of pin him down on what he was actually saying. But I'm not even actually blaming anyone here. I just think this situation is so difficult. We've never been here before, and people kind of want answers, which is normal. But how do we know? Because it's like looking into a crystal ball. And I think that kind of the confusion and not knowing, they really don't help anxiety levels because when you are sort of anxious or worried about something, one of the first things you can try and do is say to yourself, I don't need to worry about that because this. And that's
Mm-hmm.
harder to do when you don't know what this is yet. And I love the idea that you've got these words. As soon as you were saying, I've got these words and everything, I was like, God, well, I was thinking a story, but yeah, write a poem. But I think that actually kind of writing them down, sometimes that process of writing them down can organize the confusion a bit and can kind of organize your thoughts, or at least sort of home them in and bring them into kind of one focus. And all these things can massively help anxiety levels and concern and worry. So yeah, do it and send it to me to see.
I will do. You might be shocked, so I'll need to prepare you because I felt like a dartboard with lots of people taking things away from me or wanting answers, putting pressure on, and it was just like back off. So I
Yeah,
needed the explosion on paper, both visually and in words, to kind of say, breathe.
yeah. Well, I am glad you're saying that, because I look at all the things that you do for, I mean, you're so prolific in the group, the My group, um, and you're just always there, Sarah. You're always looking after everybody else, and sometimes, just sometimes, you say, "I'm just going to sleep," and I'm like, first of all, my first reaction is, "Thank goodness for that," and my
Yeah,
second
private message
is,
comes in. I'm glad you're looking after yourself.
Yeah, well, I know, and that, but I'm also thinking, I think you push it further than you should before you actually go to sleep. Don't you think so, Emma? Back me up here.
Yeah, definitely. I'm there. I'm backing you up all the way.
I'm looking in the
um,
mirror, ladies.
Yeah, all
no, no,
right.
I think that I definitely back away first and become very unhelpful way before you would.
I think what it is, we're all built and do things differently, and that's what we have to respect. And I look at you, Jackie, and think you're dedicated to words and to literature. I look at Emma and think she's dedicated to health, bodies, and good behaviours, good exercise, good diet, and none of that is discussed in the media at the moment. It's just COVID,
Mm,
COVID, COVID.
true.
We're not focusing on what we can do for self care. And for me, giving back and supporting others is making sure that no one has to go through what I did, and that we can learn from those situations jointly to make the world a better place. And it's so important to me to make the best of every day. But yes, I do honestly have siestas every day. I
Good,
can't not. Yeah.
good. Well, as long as you thrive on it, then I think that's okay. If it's starting to become a burden, then that's not fair on you, and you have to allow yourself to say, I can't be everything to all people, and I don't have to be either.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen to mummy.
Okay.
Emma, have we spent too much of your time?
No, not at all. I'm just trying to put a picture. So if anyone's interested in picking up your book and having a read, they can now see the teapot on the mug. So so yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we put that on there. It's been fascinating talking to you, and I think you've given me food for thought, because I know we've talked before about how difficult I find it to maybe focus on writing something positive. I find it much easier to write down something negative because I have to get it out of my system. And I think that is something that maybe lockdown is teaching me. Sarah will tell you I don't rest much. I'm doing stuff all the time, and I think actually this is a positive for me in this situation, is taking some time for myself.
Brilliant.
And perhaps that's then incorporating, looking at doing something a bit more positive with the written word, rather than just using it as a tool.
Yeah, so do you know that I think that's a really good point. It might be that the only time you allow yourself to write, it's more of a sort of a cause and effect thing than actually you need to be in that place. It might be that the only time you allow yourself to write is when you are in that place where you need to write to sort things out. And that actually, if you did allow yourself more time, you might find that you wanted to write when you were
Mm-hmm.
feeling up, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely experiment with that, kind of sun shining, sitting in your garden. Just pick up your pen. I can't imagine you sitting in the garden, but just say you ever did have 5 minutes to sit in the garden, then
I could dictate whilst doing an exercise class,
oh,
couldn't
bless
I?
you. Well, whatever
Don't
works,
get,
Emma. Whatever works.
don't get started, because every morning she's on that bike doing her exercise, and then she's typing emails and texts, and I get my instructions. Have you done this? Will you do that? But you've taught us, haven't you, Jackie, that when you're writing, you can only focus on one thing. You can't be doing your emails. You
Yeah,
can't be doing. It's totally focused, and a good way of tuning out from the outside world.
yeah, absolutely is. Do you know? Because I kind of get the emailer on the bike thing. So I've got my stationary bike, and I save up my emails. I know, how fab are they? And I've been cycling towards my finish for about 4 years. Thank you, Sophie. So I'm so close, just can't quite get there. But I kind of save up my admin and my emails to do on the bike, because I kind of think, well, if I'm going to write my emails, then I may as well do it on the bike, and then I get kind of 2 for 1. But I wouldn't try and write a poem or write any fiction or even edit any fiction on the bike, because of this single tasking thing. Even though it's not multitasking in the way, I mean, you can sit on a bike and you can do something at the same time. So it's slightly different multitasking. My brain wouldn't be there. I know it would wander. I wouldn't single focus. It just wouldn't work. So yeah, emails are okay. To-do lists for Sarah are okay, but you need to just stop for 5 minutes if you're going to write fiction.
I think what we take away from today, Jackie, is a lot of tips about putting paper and words together, be that therapy, be it good words, bad, and to listen to our bodies, to be gentle with ourselves, and pace it.
Yeah,
Definitely pace it. So get our sleep back in order, get a routine. If we notice differences in our body, report them. And really, I just want to say how humbled Emma and myself are to have time with you today. And
God, you're joking. It's absolutely the other way around. Totally the other way around.
I think we've
Anyway,
just got a mutual admiration
yeah,
society.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So if people want to get in touch to do one of your courses, do you want to just head us up now? Emma will put the link on.
Yeah, brilliant. So, my the contact email address for anything to do with the courses is Jackie, JACKIE .Buxton, BUXTON 35 at gmail.com. So at gmail.com. And my website, which you see, the old me would say, I feel so bad. I mean, the new me is still sort of saying this, but I feel so bad because I need to spend some time on my website. Writing lots at the moment. No, I haven't updated my website because I've been really, really focused on my own writing. But I do feel guilty, and so if you could just wait a day or two, and then look at my website, then my courses should be up to date, and that is just www. So 3 W's JackieBuxton.com.
You can't be all and everything, Jackie.
I know. Are you looking in the mirror when you say that?
Yes, but thank you again for today. I'm sure we'll be in touch again for catch-ups as COVID changes.
Yeah.
As your new book progresses, and I'm sure Emma and I look forward to signing up for your courses at the end of the year.
Brilliant. I really can't wait to have you along.
Definitely. I can't wait for you to bully me to write something positive.
Yeah, don't you worry. That will be high on my list of to-dos. Okay, don't you worry. Yeah, no, it'll be absolutely fabulous to have you along. And I'm just so sad that I've had to cancel my courses for this term, but we'll be back bigger and better.
Definitely. We'll speak soon. Thank you very much for joining us, Jackie.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.